Hey, welcome to the Rain and Morale podcast. So, do you ever feel like screaming out in the office, on Zoom, or outside the school gates? For the love of God, come on, really? Then, if this is you and you're looking for an honest, fun, and frank podcast on life and business, then sit back and listen to me, Rain and Morale. I'll be bringing great people on the show to talk, share, and debate their life experiences and business challenges, keeping the show unpolished, but in a fun and unique British style with sarcasm, tenacity, maybe a few swear words or tears. This podcast keeps it real, honest, raw, and removes the bullshit in the only way I know how, through authenticity and getting shit done. Think of it less like the Housewives of New York or Towie with the lipo and drama, and more like the house lives of the real world. I hope you'll take something away to be better informed, laugh, smile, or maybe even finally getting the confidence to shout, come on, really. So enjoy. Hey, Jonathan, welcome to the Rain and Rail podcast. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
You
How
are
are you?
most welcome. Actually, yeah, just battering down the hatches. It's not too nice outside, but I'm all good. For the listeners, I'm super excited to have Jonathan with me today. Jonathan Wragg is the Global Sustainability Director for Prominate, and we met through a mutual connection on LinkedIn actually, and got talking, and then we met up, and then we kind of realised there was quite a lot about passions and changing the narrative and the way we do things in sustainability. And I was like, I need to get you on the podcast for sure. So welcome to the show. And for those that don't know Jonathan, I'll give you a little bit about his background. But he's got an extensive experience with governments, blue chip companies, lots of household brand names in terms specifically really in packaging, waste management, recycling, and the environmental impact of those things in combination with supply chain, and all things that encompass within that. So in last year, Jonathan was actually awarded one of the top 100 most influential professionals in all things waste, recycling, and sustainability. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
And over your career, obviously, you've gained a pretty strong reputation for understanding and delivering knowledge and pathways around how you can help in manufacturing industry with waste, and recycling. So thanks
Mhm.
for coming on the show today.
No worries.
Um, I wanted to dive straight into the topic that I guess we got onto, which was really about how do we go beyond carbon? What does that mean to you? And then a little bit later on, we'll start to talk about valuing the S in ESG. So, yeah, over to you. What do you mean by it, and what does it mean for you?
Well, cheers for that introduction. First of all, I've never sounded that good. So yeah, thank you. I mean, that's fantastic. Cheers. But I think, look, carbon is really important. Okay, it has its place in every sector. But let's be honest, a lot of the main businesses that are struggling right now to understand sustainability or understand what environmental business is or more sustainable practices, including products, don't really understand carbon because they don't have people internally that are carbon literacy trained, or they don't have set departments in environmentalism, and they're just manufacturers, SMEs, for example, and SMEs are a huge part of not only UK business but European business and businesses worldwide. The thing because of that is there's this whole focus on carbon reduction, which is important. It is. And it's really important for really large businesses to not only understand it, which is really hard. Okay, there's scope one, two, and three, which is incredibly hard for a business to understand. I was in London last week at a conference, and they had their building was what 35 stories or whatever it is, and they were saying that they're having to work out each electronic gadget just to understand their scope one and everything, as well as their electricity usage and their water usage and everything else. Get it? Amazing. Love for them to understand their benchmark, understand where
Yeah,
they can improve, and then once they've reduced everything down to what they can, then look at offsetting. The problem is that people get confused with wordage. People aren't educated in the right things. So because everything they're seeing is carbon, 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 CO2, CO2, CO2,
Yeah.
people start talking about offsets before they understand what their calculations are. People start talking about carbon footprint, which is important. But in my mind, it's not, on a product, for example, it's not as important as reducing the packaging down to its minimum, making sure the product is either reusable or recyclable in the country that it's used in. Because, yes, that will reduce the carbon. But let's also look at what we're doing there as well. We're reducing waste. And waste is a huge problem around the world. It may not be specifically the most important thing where we live, Rona. It's not. I live in Sheffield. I've just had my wheel bin collected. I get my wheel bin collected every day. Every week. I can get dry mix recycling. I've got separation of cardboard. I've got general waste. I'm very lucky. Okay. UK authorities are also very lucky that they've had that funding and they've got that infrastructure to do that. The issue comes when you look at products is that it's not a one size fits all. It's the things that I can buy in my supermarket generally, whether it be my egg cartons, my milk bottles, my pop bottles, my Coke, stuff like that, whatever it is. I'm using a brand name there, Fizzy Pop, should we say. They're also available in countries that don't have the same facilities that I have access to.
Yes.
So therefore, that's why it's really important to understand recyclability in the country that a product is being sold. And there are a lot more other things where maybe before you start looking at carbon, you could also look at. Let's look at.
And equally, I guess, on that topic, it's the same as you need to factor in the carbon where you're manufactured and not just where you're importing, exporting, or selling the product to.
Of course, but I mean, if you look at, say, manufacturing facilities, and I'm very lucky to have worked as part of some very good manufacturing companies that have excellent manufacturing facilities that are as green as they can be because they're new machinery, they have good working standards for their employers, whether that be in China, whether that be in the UK, whether the US, Europe, wherever. They've got that. They've got environmental standards. They live up to a policy because there's certain standards there that have been enforced by the brand or the consumer. The problem comes when not everything, unfortunately, is as good as it says on the tin. We get into greenwashing, which I don't really want to get into because then I do get on a rant. But I think what's important is before a product really starts looking at carbon and just carbon, there is the whole renewable energy thing. Now, that focus isn't just on carbon, it's about your water usage. It is about clean manufacturing practices, making sure that the factory isn't polluting the local biodiversity or manipulating the local people by not paying the living wage or a local wage. You know, making sure that they have health and safety practices, which I remember back in the day when it was HSQE, health, safety, quality, and environmental. The Q seems to have gone on its own. What we're finding now is the EBIT is going off on its own because it's equally important. And you find HS is its own thing, but that's really important as well. That comes under social value now, and that comes under making sure people are looked after. But if you look at the E, especially in manufacturing, it doesn't matter whether it's a plastic bottle, a cardboard box, a aluminium can. You've got to make sure that actually the process all the way through the manufacturing, the shipping, the distribution, and then the end of life of this product is actually sustainable. And I mean, that word's open to interpretation, but I think it's important.
Yeah, because some people's, the pure translation of sustainable is keep doing the same thing. Well, actually, we don't want to keep doing that in a way, do we? Because that's the whole point. I read today something like our consumption is just so great now. We have consumed the same amount. I think it's 500 billion tons
in the past 6 years.
Than we have. We must have read the same article. And I was like, geez, okay, let's keep doing that for another 50 years, for example, and then where's all that going? What do we do with that? there comes a point where we can hide mountains of clothes and tires and waste in different countries and burn them, but eventually you won't be able to hide it there either.
Yeah, I think. I mean, let's be honest. Look, not a lot has really changed. A lot has changed, but then actually, if you go back to really how things are, well, not a lot has changed. Fast fashion is still fast fashion. Plastic is still being produced at huge levels. And yes, I agree that plastic in some forms is highly recyclable. The problem I've got is when it goes to countries where they don't have the infrastructure in place
Yeah.
to even start recycling it. Yet, these big brands, these big companies, everything, they are flooding the market, shall we say, and marketing heavily on how good this product is, whether it be drinks, beauty, whatever that is. Yes, these products are good. They're very good in my household right now because I know what I can do with them at end of life.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people out there, a lot of people out there that are severely affected by buying. So therefore, is it the consumer's fault that they bought it? Well, that's life. They buy things, whereas people earn more money, they tend to buy stuff. Is it the brand's fault for selling things and growing in that
Yeah.
industry? Well, no, because that's the world that we live in. Businesses want to grow, business wants to boom. We've had a lot of
Yeah.
influx in economy and things like that. So, well, actually, what we're looking at there is if we look at the word sustainable, don't narrow down to products. It's about sustainable business practices and
Hmm.
understanding what actually a business is doing in its area. And ESG can play a huge part in actually understanding not bragging about how good you are, but understanding where you are as a business, where you need to improve, but more importantly, clearly showing how you are going to improve over a set timeline. And that's why the
Yeah,
rest in ESG is so important.
yeah, there's a couple of things I'd like to get your view on. I think one of them being, listen, this comes down to companies having to bear all, I guess, in a way,
Mm.
and transparency, credibility, authenticity, and actually, we all know we've worked with amazing companies, and
Mm.
there are brilliant companies out there that, if you were a true activist, you could walk through their doors and rip their ESG report apart. And I think there's a danger of that. And I think one of the things, the other side of that is, I'm really passionate about going, okay, this is where you are today. What have you improved? And then how are you going to keep moving and keep influencing and keep collaborating? Surely
Absolutely.
we have to change that narrative because there's a huge fear factor on this.
There is, and don't get me wrong, I've been guilty in the past of calling out greenwashing. I'm still a huge advocate of it because, but once again, what people don't realize is actually it's about people are shouting about the wrong things. They're trying to promote the wrong things. Me personally, I would rather know a business, it understands where it is and understands that it's not perfect because no business is perfect. I don't care who you are. There's um there's a famous saying I watched a show recently called Billions, and Warren Buffett said a saying in that if you a police car follows a car for 500 miles, they will get a ticket. If you analyze everybody to the direct
Yeah,
thing that eventually, no matter how good a driver they are, they will get a ticket. And it is the same
yeah,
for any company. What you've got to do is equally look at the positives. There are huge
yeah,
fast food chains out there, for example, that their packaging is a real problem. It is a real problem. But then if you, and I'm not promoting them, but if you spin that,
yeah,
there are the positives that they are huge employers. They
yeah,
are huge payers to farming communities and things like that, which has its own carbon footprint and blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, people want this stuff and they are supplying a service. If people didn't buy it, then they wouldn't exist. So, look, where does the problem lie? Well, we can get into whole consumerism, we can get into everything, but ultimately,
yeah.
sustainability is about being better tomorrow than you are today and yesterday. And it's really important that each individual business clearly states what it means by the word sustainability. because for every business that has to be different. It has to be with people, culture, products or not, or
Yeah.
services, or buildings, or regulations, or whatever they're involved in. Sustainability means something different to every single business, and not enough people know that.
Yeah, and I think it is really hard, isn't it? I mean, for
Mm.
someone who's kind of you've been in the industry a long time, I'm a relative newbie, only sort of 7 years in this space. It's so intensely complex and interconnected that you can't blame. There's so much greenwashing that happens that maybe not have been deliberately, genuinely thought they were doing the right thing. They were guided by maybe a brand or an agency that didn't have the right skill sets. And I think sometimes it's just about putting your hands up and going, I don't get it. Like, I literally don't get it. Where the hell do I start? But you've got this forced legislation coming at them like a truck for carbon. So everything is carbon, carbon, carbon. And I think that's it. How do we change the narrative that whilst you're mapping that product from end to end, if you literally follow it through the supply chain to the very last in-home experience or service, what are all those savings, amazing opportunities you can make to save on amount of packaging or waste and recyclable? There's so many opportunities in that it really. But I also know on the flip side, working in a corporate world, it's head down. I work in finance, I work in supply chain. I've got my KPIs, I've got my stakeholders, and we have to make money.
Absolutely. And one of the biggest organizations out there that, for me, are doing the most good in supporting this, but also understanding that, is the UN Global Compact Network. So, for
Mhm.
those that don't know, the UN Global Compact Network is a network of individual countries that all come together under the UN Global Compact. The UN Global Compact Network UK, which is a mouthful, is absolutely brilliant if you use it to its full. And I was at an event recently, it was only last week actually, and I'm a massive advocate of those. I'm a massive advocate of the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, and their framework. I'm a massive advocate of the training programs that they've got going on. But even I didn't know everything that was open up to it, to members. So it was good to go to this event about maximizing your membership
Yeah,
and understand what else is out there. But when they were talking, they said something really interesting, that actually 75% of their members don't feel that they've got the support of the C-suite, of the board.
yeah,
And that's really interesting, because actually, whenever you talk about impact, whether that be environmental and reducing your environmental impact, or impact socially and
socially. Yeah,
increasing your social impact, so dual impact, reducing your environmental impact while increasing your social impact. Well, actually, none of that's possible within a business if you don't have the support, because at some point it will need resource. Now, that resource is either
yes,
going to have to come from employing the right person to lead the projects, because let's make no bones about it, effectively, sustainability is lots and lots of little projects.
yeah,
ESG is lots and lots of little projects. So ultimately, even if you haven't got the most environmental head on you, if you're a project manager, you should be able to lead a
yeah,
CSR, sustainability agenda, 5 pillars, ESG, whatever those agendas are, because it's lots of little projects. The problem you've got is if that's not supported from C-suite, and I'm really lucky, I am supported. I've got an amazing
yeah,
CEO who had this vision, and then she went out and hired certain directors for that level of specialism, whether that be sales, marketing, or sustainability in my case, because she
yeah,
recognized actually it was about project management, not just about the greater thing on carbon, but understanding where we are, and then little projects about how we want to be better and where do we get to. But I speak to a lot of people in my situation, whether that be job role or environmental
yeah,
manager, ESG director. Lots of people doing this as a dual role now because the C-suite don't
yeah,
quite understand investment required. So it's all about support. And none of this is possible without support. And for me, without these big businesses at C-suite level and investor level, really understanding the importance of
Mm-hmm.
why being better and moving away from this head down going forward, because business as usual, well, that'll no longer work because you won't be
Yeah.
able to do that for much longer because we will run out of stuff required for business as usual. So you're going to have to change. The UN Global Compact Network, especially the UK one, they're really speaking to whether that be the large businesses, some insurance
Yeah.
companies, etc., the hedge funds, but then also the SMEs and the charities and the NGOs to say, actually continuing in this direction, it's not going to be good because you can't, you're too bad, you're going to lose custom, there's money to
Yeah.
lose for you guys. You need to change and you need to invest. I mean, you only need to go on LinkedIn now to see the level of sustainability manager roles out there that have increased over the years, which is,
Loads.
yeah, which is great. What's not increasing at the same level is the C-suite person who they report into. Because I know a
Yeah.
lot of people, Rona, who are very well trained, very well educated. They go for these jobs, they go for the interviews, and the first question they get is, "I don't know who you would report into," or "You're more qualified than the person you're going to be reporting into." Well, that's
Yeah.
not the sustainability person's fault. That's
Yeah.
the corporation's fault for not understanding where sustainability sits. It's not finance, it's not operations, it's not sales, it's not marketing, it's not business as usual. It's a pillar on its own. And that's where
Yeah.
sustainable business practice comes in.
And actually, that's a really interesting way to put it. Could you argue, in a sense, for me, that actually sustainability is your DNA? Is essentially, when I was at Red Bull, for example, we always put the consumer at the heart of anything and everything we did. Didn't matter
Yep.
what department you worked in. And there's a feeling and a sense for me that actually, not because I work in this space, but it is like, well, why don't we start with C-suite sustainability and then the departments underneath? Like,
Mm.
you can have better finance. So the finance team can be looking at things like investments, pensions, where they do their, costs of goods. Procurement can do the same, commercial and marketing. They can all, and it can all be that trickle down. But I think, I know only 2% of C-suites have enough knowledge, would be seen as exceptional in the field in
Yep.
this space. How do we change that?
I think actually you've just said a really good point, actually. Where I'm not going to say where we are, but where businesses in general is where it's always been. It's a very siloed
Yeah.
operation. It's as simple as
Yeah.
that. You've got finance specialists doing finance things. You've got sales specialists doing sales things. You've got marketing, blah, 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 and everything doing procurement, doing under. Okay. Now, if you want to seriously look at a sustainable business practice, each one of those siloed organizations needs to be doing its own programs.
Yeah.
But actually, if you think about project management, who do those report into? Because what you'll actually find is they contradict each other. They're
Yeah.
fighting for funding. They're fighting for money. They go at different paces. They don't understand how to report in different times. And what you need is actually pulling it all together and that going in. Now, that shouldn't fall on a CEO, an MD, a COO, or something like that, because they've got other things that they need to concentrate on. They've got investor relations. They've got actually keeping the business going. They've got keeping
Yeah.
the business going, making things go normal. Well, actually, if you move it to another area altogether, sustainability, if you want to call it, or ESG or CSR, whatever department you want to call it, well, actually, what you'd actually see is they are the project managers for all these individual silos.
Yeah.
You've just said there, moving pensions is actually huge for carbon. It really is.
Yes.
But it's not as simple as that because CEOs have a requirement for investors and their employers to actually make sure that they are secure and financially secure going forward.
Yeah.
I had no idea about the detail of this until recently speaking to a hedge fund manager. And I just asked him outright, why are you still investing in big oil, for example? He said, well, I have an obligation to make sure that the money is secure and this area of business is backed. He's not
Yeah,
actually looking at the big oil banner. What he's looking at is long-term financial security for his investors and the pots that he looks after,
yeah,
which is intriguing in itself and a rabbit hole I can't possibly go down because I'm not qualified. But
yeah,
so if you're going to put just that project just on a finance person, well, that's not a month project. That's not a 6-month project. It might actually be a 10-year project on understanding how to change the
yeah,
financial. What you'll actually find is a finance person wants to report that in data, in Excel. But actually, that shift is also important to the sales team because they can sell it. They can say how
yes,
good the business is going and doing that. And if those areas aren't talking to each other and aren't doing all these different projects, then what you'll find is sustainability will actually fail within a business. They will
yeah,
get stuck in a rut and then they'll revert back to what we started this whole conversation about, just looking at carbon. Well, there's a lot more you can do than just looking at carbon.
yeah. No, and I think yes, it is absolutely. I can't really add more to that because I'm hugely passionate about that. That there are 17 goals, 300 objectives. There is so much businesses can and should be doing that there is a raft of opportunity for every department at every level to get involved in this. And maybe it's my naivety, maybe it's my passion, and it's not everybody else's. But I think on a human level, if we shift the conversation to the S, the social
Mm,
side, let's look at it and go, okay, so how can our business be more socially
mm,
responsible? So this is about looking after your employees, looking after your supply chain workforce, looking after, be it their pensions or their free time or their quality of life, the support. I had a lovely message yesterday um, from the Prince's Trust, actually. And I've got a really amazing mentee at the moment, but he's having an extremely tough time, extremely tough, far more beyond than I'm qualified to do. And actually, the Prince's Trust reached out to me and offered me help and said, actually, you as a mentor need some help. Here's where we can go and here's where we can help you. And that just meant an awful lot to me. In that moment, it was like, oh God, yeah, I haven't got to take all of this on my shoulders. So
mm.
talk to me a bit more about the social value and how we can implement that within organizations.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important as well to when we're talking about social value, okay, you've also got to look at social impact, and they are two different things. Okay, so I have been in touch and I've followed for a long time an organization called Benevite, who are amazing, okay, CSR organization that help really big businesses, including some really good like companies that you would know and you've probably got apps for on your phone, help be better with regards to volunteering, not only in their local communities, but also virtually as well.
Yeah.
And they do a report every year. And their latest report, I'm just reading it now, is 90% of CSR leaders say companies should spend more time acting on social justice issues through their own practices and programs versus making bold statements. Now,
Love that.
that is about impact. That is about actually not just saying stuff, but actually doing stuff. Okay. And then the
Yeah.
other stat that really stands out here is 9 in 10 CSR leaders agree that companies who are focused on building community into their culture will be the most successful. Now, I agree with that hugely. Okay.
Yeah.
I think, look, throughout a career or whatever, we've all been in a position where you feel either undervalued or not appreciated, whether that be monetary or skill, or
Yeah.
the business doesn't align with your personal values. I'm obviously a hippie at heart, and you've got that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, everybody's there to earn a living. That's that we work there to earn a living. Not a lot of people actually do that just for the fun of it. Okay, they actually are there to earn a living.
Yeah.
So it's important actually that businesses, when you're looking at social impact, link that to their staff. You need
Yeah.
to look at your diversity and inclusivity policies. You need to look at what is the makeup of your staff and what is important to them. Social impact shouldn't just be about one board member or one director going, right, let's go and clean this beach because it's down my road and we should do that. Well, actually,
Yeah.
what's your engagement level? You're going to force some of your staff, don't get me wrong, the cleaning the beach is good,
Yeah.
but the level of engagement and the impact that you're going to get, actually, there's no longevity in that, because what, the buy-in's not going to be 100%, it's not going to be great, even if they get a day off for it, whatever, blah blah blah. It's about understanding, well, what's important. My partner's work, actually, they had a member of staff who had motor neuron disease, unfortunately, and
Yeah.
passed away, and they link all of their social impact strategies, well, most of it actually, to the Motor Neuron Disease Foundation. Obviously, it's become famous
Yeah.
recently with Rob Burrows. My stepmom passed away with motor neuron disease a couple of years ago. So it's important to me as well. But what they did there is they found that actually a lot of staff members were impacted by the passing away of that. And actually, once that staff member got diagnosed with that, people actually found out what that disease is and the horrible thing
Yeah.
that it is. And it became personal to that company, but the people that work there, which is amazing. When you look at big corporations and big international corporations, you can't have that level of nuance, that tiny little
Yeah.
detail. You've got to reach out, you've got to do it on a local level, especially if you've got a company that is in America, in Europe, and in Asia, and maybe Southeast Asia or China as well. They're four very
Totally
different
different.
areas. They're four very different areas socially, the way that the work ethic, the way that they talk about work, the way that they're there to work,
Yeah.
but also what they see outside of their front door is also very different. So you can't just have a one size fits all social initiative.
Yeah.
Look at your impact, look at how it makes your staff feel, and then track that by the impact that you're doing. Is your supply chain paying living wages? Are you polluting local areas? Are there education schemes that you can give to your local areas, as well as educating just your staff on what's important and what you're doing? There's a lot out there that you can do. Personally, I would partner with a third party if you don't have a CSR or
Yeah.
social specialist within your organization.
No, that's great advice. So what was the name of the company again for people listening?
Benevite. But there is one
Benevite.
thing about
Just an
Benevite.
example.
Yeah, they are for the big guys out there.
Right.
The SMEs will struggle to get on with them. It is ultimately quite expensive to set up the networks and set up the data
Yeah.
there. But they are an amazing organization to follow, even if you don't end up joining them. And there are
Yeah.
lots of others out there. Profit with Purpose was an amazing one, led by the amazing Isabel Kelly.
Yeah.
And she's an amazing woman out there doing fantastic work and really helping businesses understand the
Yeah.
value of their profit and how actually the difference that they can make just by not giving away their profit, but
Yeah.
investing it in a different area than a dividend, for example.
No, that's huge. And I think maybe that comes back nicely to the support and the C-suite, because fundamentally it's a little bit like the political sort of calendars, that they're often only in 2, 4, maybe 5 years, and then it's in out, and so that creates a whole challenge. But let's just to kind of end the session, give me your top 2 bits of positive advice for anyone listening, specifically SMEs, because I think the big boys can often get the big consultants, the experts that can pay for these things.
Yeah.
For the SMEs out there, a couple of things that bits of advice.
Yeah. Okay. If you actually start looking at this, what you'll find is some low hanging fruit. You'll actually find that there's some things that are really easy to do. Okay. Energy reduction isn't usually that hard, especially whether that's in an office environment or a factory environment. Switching your energy to renewable energy is a huge boost for the company. But at the same time, you need to make sure that it's right for you with regards to money, because sometimes renewable energy structure can be a bit more expensive. Okay.
Yeah.
When you look at your fleet and your cars, is it all diesel, or can you move to hybrid, or can you move to electronic vehicles, or can you eliminate business travel down to its minimum by using public transport, for example? We have I'm not going to say an amazing train network in this country, but we have a good network, and I'm very lucky that Sheffield to London is actually really easy, and most of the time pretty on time and there.
Very expensive here.
Yeah, it is. But at the same time, you've also got to look at that as a business on actually, do them costs outweigh a 3-year lease on a car for a company car, or does that person need to be going to every corner of the UK anymore? Is it just a straight line between office and home, or do you work remotely? Look at your IT issues. Look at your IT servers, because a lot of them use a lot of power and a lot of water. But there's also cloud data out there. We're lucky we've moved a lot of our systems to cloud-based, and then we have traced that all the way through to make sure that they themselves are on green servers, whether that be either Microsoft or Amazon servers, AWS or Azure, to make sure that they are renewable as well and less water usage and all that kind of thing. But if you're looking at the social standpoint, look at your local area. Are you doing everything that you can possibly do to link to your local area? Are there charities out there that you can benefit? And I don't just mean monetary value, but I mean volunteering value as well. Each business will have amazing members of staff with amazing backgrounds and skills that they can pass on to local communities, whether that be volunteering, helping people get into work. There's a lot of things you can do out there as well. And I think if you really look, not everything costs the earth to do. You've just got to actually start looking at what you're doing. If things look expensive, moving to solar, for example, on a huge factory, then understand what that cost is, and then understand what the finance to do that over 5 to 10 years will be. Don't look at doing it instantly if you can't afford it, but what will make you be able to do it in the next 5 to 10 years to make sure that your area is better than it is today.
Yeah. That's amazing. Thank you so much, Jonathan. I'm sure we'll probably do another session at some point about like great ideas and hints. And there's even now people out there with solar where it's capex free. So there's plenty of that going on as well. So yeah, just thank you so much. I've really, really enjoyed the session, and thanks for sharing some of the experience as well. It's massively valuable.
No problem. Thank you very much for having me. It's been amazing.
You're welcome.
Oh, that's it. You've made it. The show's over. Thank you for being with us. I hope you've been able to take something away, maybe solve a problem, or just know you're not alone. Here's hoping it made you smile with a few laughs along the way. Please feel free to find me on all social media channels, and you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. Just search the Road and Morale podcast. Have an awesome day and see you next time.